Hi. This week, it was quite a big week, and I'm naming it The Delicious Unknown. At the core of all the sessions over all of time that this work has been done, the underlying element is that white canvas of the unknown that really is the invitation. And a lot of the sessions are really about how that is so scary that we want to stay in the known and sort out where things come from and point to it and label it, and we box ourselves in. Nobody boxes us in. We box ourselves in. And the deliciousness of the unknown and the true magnificence of who we are, it has an element of unlimited in its own specific ways that fit each of us. And we experience it very differently. So quite a lot are experiencing migraines, headaches, not sleeping, all of that. And I mean, that's a perennial. It tends to be there. But it's kind of coming to a head. And one of the reasons it's coming to a head is because the unknown is inviting like never before. It's showing opportunities and ways of being like never before. And because when things are looser and more is able to be created in that, the desire to lock it down and to know it, or if we have locked ourselves down at some point in time, there's that blockage then that fights the invitation. And there's part of us that cannot tolerate the not going to the invitation. And what was really lovely in one of the sessions, this desire to know, and the thing is, part of wanting to know is, what if something happens that is a disaster? What if something happens in the hell? And it's like we can't resolve those things. The only thing we can resolve is in that is to go within self and go, I don't know, and I know I'll be fine. I don't know, and I know I'll work it out. It'll come to me. And it's very much that delicious unknown that carries all of that comes to you, and it's not centered in mind. It doesn't mean you don't use your mind for a logic. Don't quit your job hoping that something's going to come when you're relying on the job for rent. There's a logic in this way of being with it. But in this wanting to know to that extent, it went to an essence that said uncomfortable with sex. And I said, well, how's your sex life? And and I said, well, if sex is a known thing and you're on a train track with it, it's very interesting. So to really start exploring in the unknown, so that each time that we do have intimacy, whether it's in a dialogue or physically or emotionally, the unknown and the openness, rather than deciding, oh, that always goes in this direction. I mean, we end up at some point not wanting to get on the train at all. So much nicer when it isn't a train and the destination is one that you never ever thought you would arrive at. The deliciousness of the unknown. So someone came to see me who's just feeling so good about life, and really like a form of confirming and a desire to be further open. And if I do it in a diagram, it shows up like this. So here we have all the achievements and things that are achieved in different things. They're like sealed off, they're accomplishments. These are accomplishments. But it knew there was more. There's just something calling. And what it was, in the process of all of these, and wonderful as these achievements are, it had a sense of asking for permission or needing to go to someone to see if something could be done. And a lot of the things that were coming to this being, he could feel them, he just didn't know how to bridge the gap. And all these wonderful unknowns were sitting there, and he could feel them. And there was really a process of, and it showed in other sessions as well, a sense of being proactive about who you are and bringing that to the surface and approaching whatever the next thing is by saying, right, this is clearly what comes to me and I can see, and this is what I'm going to do with it. Rather than always feeling I'm going to ask for permission, they generally say no because they're kind of less interested than I am. And the passion that is carried is not necessarily carried by those in the organisation. So in feeling the presenting of it in a different way, claiming it and saying this is what I'm doing, kind of opened the door of potential of how much more could be brought through and how much more of self could be expressed in life. So it was a real opening, and this opening was very much part of this weekend. So someone also came that had the immensity of this energy, like vast, vast energy. But somehow all that energy by age 11 got locked into a box. Something in this being said, this is life, I can't change it. And there's a huge paradox that showed up here. Because his ability to come into this world in the vastness of all that is, he came into this world being very, very proficient at that. And I call these beings that they know how to surf a ride. They ride with the wave, they become one with it. They can see it and they can enjoy it, and they have this vast capacity of being able to ride the waves that present themselves. So what had happened is this great capacity of seeing now could only express itself in this box. Because the fact that he could ride waves could not be taken away. Because when he said at 11, this is it, I cannot change it, that also included the capacity to ride waves. When he saw projects, they came about one after the other. But each time it was taken away, it was taken away, it was taken away one way or another, to the point that this box got so uncomfortable that it needed to be looked at. So, but being so depleted by this box and things being taken away, there was no real oomph left to even bother, which itself is very painful. So, And you may find that too, that this has happened. You know, people's businesses went under. They were left with debts that were crippling through the process of it. I mean, there was terrible stuff that happened. And this being actually overcame that and then overcame it again. And still these things kept being taken away. And part of that actually was that in that box, he saw things for others and cared for others, and that became the limited seeing, rather than seeing that he could ride that and benefit himself. So both see and benefit self in a solid way. But when we're that exhausted and that tired, it's time to sit on the shore. And not every wave is rideable. I mean, some of you like riding boogie boards, then enjoy the boogie boards. Others don't think boogie board is the thing, they want bigger waves, yeah? But at the same time, don't wait for a huge wave. Get used to riding waves so that bigger waves can be ridden, all that sort of stuff. But the need to sit back, knowing a wave will come and that you'll see it and you'll get on your board and you'll ride it, and that will return. So there are others that I saw this weekend who are actually finally seeing the magnificence of this. And I've written it down here. This being was finally seeing the best was in God's hands. Source of all that is, the energy that's available for all. To see it in the best way. Because if you see it in the best way, the best can show itself. One being came because she was absolutely tired of feeling this sense of rejection that was felt since early childhood. But really what it was this massive energy that she could access. And she had it as a young child. So sitting in a high chair was not her favourite gig. So she was an annoying child. And the siblings weren't. They were quite happy to sit with a book and read and be calm and do the proper way of behaving. And some of the amazing achievements that were experienced in life with this massive energy, what she could stand in, how she could serve others in emergencies and all sorts of dire situations, and that energy could meet that and stand in it, she could sit in it. And what she had happened is her focus had lent itself towards seeing the worst and always complaining about how she was seen rather than seeing herself. And in taking the focus and then focusing on what had been unseen, because if you only look on one train track, you're not seeing other ways of seeing self that opens up a joyful life rather than being stuck in feeling criticized and annoyed by the stories and all that sort of stuff. So that was quite a freedom. And again, it is, we put ourselves in a box with these stories. Just because others see you that way does not mean you are that way. It's for you to free yourself up and to not lock yourself in. And see, when someone tries to tell me, which they have in the past, of telling me who I am and what it is, I kind of get furious. And I can remember once slapping my hand on the table and go, you do not and will never be able to tell me who I am. And then I didn't say this, but a little voice at the back of my head said, because I know myself, there are unknowns yet to be discovered that I can't even know. We barely know ourselves, let alone deciding who others are. So the other element that, what followed on from that in terms of this vast energy, someone else that came to see me had this anger, and she didn't like the anger, didn't want to sit in the anger, didn't want it from others, gave her a shock, but then she didn't like it when she felt it herself either. And I found this rather profound because this came up in her life because it's preparing her for something. It's like it was saying, look, you've got to get used to this. You need to sit in this because in the future, you're going to need to be calm in that energy so that you can feel comfortable with it and you direct and teach with it. In time, if you can do that, it will be of great service. Which kind of was mirrored in someone else who came as well, who had in fact been of service and was kind of ridiculed to some extent of, oh, why are you doing that? It's not your job to do this, that, or the other, or why would you do that? You know, where this being was generally zenning and cleaning and being of service and making it all nice for everyone. And she kind of stayed with herself because she preferred to be that. But underneath it all, there was also something that was brewing that said there will be a time where they will discover who you are. And they will see that you're not this soft goody-goody trying to make everything nice and that you're pliable. You're pliable because you chose to be pliable. But there's a part of you that when you put your foot down and you are clear, you will be unbudgeable and you will get what it is you see, and how you see it will be how it will show. Some of these circumstances are actually preparations for an inner self to sit in and strengthen and be okay with. One woman who came to see me has been in a very difficult situation where, and this was kind of interesting because during the session she said, I feel I have some beings around me, and I'll share what that was. So the situation was she was constantly being blamed for doing things she hadn't done. And this is quite prevalent. It may be in all cultures, but the European cultures can be possessive with their women and feel that the moment they're out of the house, they get up to no good and what have they done? But when this is continuous, it wears you down. And because it's not true, it can actually crush one. And over the decades, it had kind of done that. And it needed to be balanced out. And because if we're silent in these situations and we just live with it and make it okay, it kind of showed up that, okay, that energy is over here and nothing is balancing it out. And the beautiful thing in this situation was there was great love for this being who made these accusations. But it was silent over here. And to argue with it, saying that's not true, whatever, that just increases the argument. So we came to a sense to meet it with a sense of humour and to meet it with a sense of love that was felt for this being. And to meet and go, oh, you idiot, you're the only one I've ever really thought about, which was true in this case, and I love you, and just balance it out. Not easy, but if you start and you continue it, eventually at least you're bringing a balance in yourself in terms of how you meet those circumstances. So it is, again, it's entering into the unknown, because that hadn't been tried before. And we had such a good laugh about all the potentialities of how things could be met along the way. That balances it out, that lifts the spirit. Because the not feeling quite right did not come from eating habits, health focuses, which were beautiful and disciplined. It was only this element that gave the disturbance that really needed to be addressed. So the speaking up is important in this. So there was another one that I will share that I feel is relevant here. The unknown can be a real pest for some people, especially if they've had a circumstance earlier on in their life where something happened that really locked in, I must be on alert, because it won't allow the relaxation. So if the relaxation comes, it goes, I've got to find something in that nothingness to focus on, to keep me in that state. And what can happen with that is that we can go from one thing to another. We can even go from one medication to another medication and then to another medication. Before you know it, you'll end up with a lot of medications, which were all derived from feeling that it's got to be something. So to realize and to start experiencing the relaxation and the okayness of that is a big thing. Rather than being threatened by the unknown, to have the deliciousness of the unknown start to become how you look at it. When nothing can be seen, just know the best is on its way. And regardless of how it shows up, there are gifts in all of that which shows up, because it wouldn't show us anything else but the best in terms of how we can open up to the surprises, to what else we are that we can bring through. So to get in touch with some of those elements of the unknown, how do we raise our energy? How do we bring it to the surface? With one, it was to bring jest into it. For another, it was saying, you need to dance. Even if it's when you're cooking, to put something on and kind of dance while you're doing the cooking, so that this energy raises itself, that gets in touch with all potentialities of the unknown, that open the doorway to bring more and more of that into being. So the two cards that showed up this week were purpose and self. Purpose. Feel a sense of purpose in everything you do. Know that you can learn your lessons and move on. Understand that everything has a purpose. You can learn from your past, but do not dwell upon it. Move forward with purpose even when the direction is unclear. There is a higher purpose to everything. Self. The self remains true. That was that element of, I can't change this. That which is that that we are is unchangeable, whether we live it or whether we don't live it. At its core, it is unchangeable. So when we experience something or we show more of who we are, we're not changing anything. We're bringing through what exists. That potentiality exists. We just bring it through and forth, and we meet the invitation. The self remains true. The self remains pure. Your ego may be trying to take you away from the knowing of your whole self. Do not be troubled, do not be misled. Your self is totally unlimited and is guided by your heart and soul. All you need to do is listen and trust yourself. Invite the delicious unknown.